All right, so welcome to the Rules and Government Relations meeting of April 28th, 2020. It's 5:30. Everyone's present. Do we have minutes to approve?
I sent them, Tom, but we're going to approve them next time because I literally just sent them. So.
Yeah, I was going to say I haven't really had a chance to look at them. So, okay, cool. Sounds good. There are members of the public here. Would you like to speak, members of the public?
I would. I don't want to jump on everyone. Since you're discussing charter issues, and since I was a member of the Charter Review Committee, I thought it would be important to at least say something. I think our work was really good. I think we had a thorough process, very thorough. And I also think that it's important that the people of Easthampton understand that. And I would be in favor of some way of people seeing that. I think they did see it in the questions on the ballot, which I think was important. What I also understand is that you are considering whether to move forward with the 2020 process. There are some things that I think, particularly in light of yesterday's super excellent We the People victory by the students, that it might be important to consider youth voting in Easthampton. I think that we literally can say we have the most informed youth electorate in the country. So I think that's important. And there are some other issues. I mean, the support for ranked choice voting was very strong. And I think that, you know, the record will show that I was interested in seeing that for all offices. And then I think it has strong support with the people. Anyway, so those are my opinions. I hope that they can be useful in some manner.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dave, you want to say anything?
No, I'm just you know, I'm happy with our work. I just like to see things move forward. I guess I don't know the right word, not efficiently, but as practical as possible in light of current climate.
Great. Well, since you guys are here, do you guys want to just jump right into talking about charter review?
Should I raise my hand?
Sure. I mean, there's only 6 of us, but yeah.
Yeah, I will. I want to thank you, first of all, Tom, for bringing it up, because if you didn't bring it up, I wouldn't say, hey, Mayor, what's going on with the charter? Tom Peake wants to know, and we need to get moving on it. A tremendous amount of work was done, and we did meet with the city attorney in January, but unfortunately, as I said in my emails, he thought he had to put it in legislative form. You know how complicated that is, so that it could go to the legislature. But we have to vote on what we want to approve first. Once the committee was done, it goes to the city attorney, then to the full council. Full council reviews it. The version I sent, the quote unquote clean version, is just all the markups in a way that's easy to read, is a version that the mayor also approved. She has indicated that she would like to see that be done prior to any new things. So if you want to approach other items, we would have to go through her. But she indicated that obviously there's about 6 or 8 more hours of work for the city attorney to turn what we have into legislative process. And we have time in that. Legislature's not going to touch this until spring, if then. Hopefully, and he doesn't think it would need to go to the ballot. The changes aren't as major as ranked choice voting, for instance. And I would like to recommend, but also his opinion came forward through the mayor that all we have to do is vote on whether or not this charter review will be acceptable for a 2020 review once we're finished with it. And I would like to recommend to the full council that we do that, finish this one, and then entertain new ones. Once this is finished, hearing what Sarah said, and Tom, maybe you have some ideas on what else you want done. Once this is finished and we send it off to the legislature, then we could move on new changes if there's more, because we'll have in front of us what we're hoping the legislature would approve. In other words, a final document of the work from the 2019-2020 committee, 2018-19 committee. And I'd like to see, they worked hard, Tom, you and I and Omar, there's counselors on it, they worked hard. I would love to see this committee, I'd like to move this, the two documents I sent, I'd put them on in the packet for being sent to this committee, the standing committee to review. We would invite Omar, of course, because he was on the committee, and any of the former charter review members, and we would vote whether we want to accept these changes formally as a committee and then send it to the full council. That could take a couple of months, but again, the rush isn't there because the city attorney has to do a lot of work after that, and I don't think it's going to have to go on the ballot. Once the legislature approves it and we get a new charter, our other changes could go, any new changes, and that could be, we could do an ad hoc committee at any time like we did for this one. Like next year, we could do an ad hoc committee and approach those. The mayor did indicate that if any of the work that if we had amendments that required city attorney review, she wasn't going to feel good about entertaining that. I mean, on this document right now, we may be at the point of approving what's there as a full council. Maybe some small language amendments would be okay, but what Sarah just said, that would have to go through the city attorney, for instance. I don't think she would be in favor of that, although we could ask her. But those kinds of things would mean a new process, I feel, where we have citizens involved. I think we finished this document as a council standing committee with, inviting former charter review members, Joe McCoy, and we already have 3 of us that were on the committee. We could defend our changes to the rest of the council. So I'd like to recommend that this be the one we do, and secondly, for the 2020, and secondly, that we send it to the committee through the council to be reviewed by the rules committee instead of a separate committee. I don't think that's necessary, but I'm open to hearing everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Peg, what do you think?
So I read the documents that you sent, Dan, and I honestly can't tell the difference between what the lawyer put in. They appear to be the same to me. So I'm not entirely clear. I know where there's some annotations about lawyer recommends this wording. A couple of times I didn't agree with what he said. But so if you're saying that we present to the full, there's a couple of things. If we present it to the full council as the document that will come back to rules to be voted hands up, hands down, and allow others to participate, I think we need to be much, much clearer about what you guys came up with versus what the lawyer has amended onto it, because it's not clear to me in reading both documents, including both documents today. The second thing is it's really messy. Like from a formatting perspective, it's messy. So like all hyphens have been gotten rid of. So words that are hyphenated are now all together. Sections of the document that might be section 3-2 are now section 32. So it needs some cleaning up, and that, I think, before we present it to the city council, I'd like to see a cleaner document that we can work from.
I have a few things. First of all, what happened to you has happened to others. Things like 3-2 becoming 32 and hyphens being removed. There's a translation happening between your word program and mine. Mine is pretty clean in the sense that those kinds of grammatical errors do not exist on my copy. I can try
Just make it a PDF, Dan. If you make it a PDF, Anybody can.
That's what I was thinking I would do for the city council. Secondly, the city attorney marked up version, if you turn off the markups or put the word or click on original, that's what the committee recommended. His markups, yes, they're very, I tried to go through and look at what he recommended. And when we met, the mayor said, she likes the city attorney's recommendations. Okay, we could disagree with them, but we would have to convince the mayor that we like our language versus her language, etc. So there is some work to be done, but I think the PDF idea is the best idea to clean up that formatting problem. And because I did it along with Tom and Omar, I think as we go through it chapter by chapter, we could really look at it, and somebody like Peg can say, hey, why does this say this? And maybe there's a mistake. Maybe things are, maybe I messed up when I tried to do my clean version. But that's what we would do. We would go through it and then approve what we like. If we disapprove it, we can do that. That doesn't change what goes to the legislature. It's changing the language significantly that the mayor and the city attorney would have to get involved. And that's where we'd have to have her. We could try it, but I don't know what's going to happen.
So yeah. All right. Could we just back up for a second? The way I see it, there's sort of two processes here, two tasks that a charter review committee might undertake. And I think we need to consider them sort of separately, even though they kind of do have to do with one another. So they both kind of concern what I might call unfinished business from our last, what I would consider a very successful and exciting charter review process. One aspect of that was a batch of recommendations that we sent to the city solicitor in August of 2019 that we just simply didn't get solicitor feedback back before the committee, which has a 1-year window to complete its work, per our charter, just dissolved. So that we now have feedback from that committee, and somebody, be it an ad hoc committee of the city council or a charter review committee with members of the public actually getting a vote or whatever it's going to be, the idea is that somebody is going to have to take that the solicitor recommendations and figure out what we're going to make of them. So for instance, let's just say that there was, that there's some recommendation we made that we're currently doing something one way and we wanted to do it a different way. And the city council or the city solicitor says, well, you can't do it that way, but you could do it a different sort of similar way, right? What somebody needs to decide is that still an improvement, or should we just scrap it and go with the status quo? That's the sort of determinations that I just want to make sure that we're all, if I'm seeming overly I'm just being too slow in the way I'm describing this, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page about what we're talking about here. That there's just, hold on, Dan, I'm almost done. So there's that one aspect of it, which is completing the work of completing sort of the process of those recommendations that were made by the last charter review committee. There's also the fact that when we did the last charter review committee, we convened in September, which gave us a pretty limited, it gave us 9 months instead of a year to get anything to the legislature if we wanted them to be able to process it in time for the November election. And so what that meant is that there's a number of ideas that people did bring up over the course of the review committee that we didn't even necessarily discuss whether or not they would be interesting or positive ideas. We just were we simply do not have time to discuss this. So there's certainly things that that the committee like the youth voting thing that Sarah brought up is a good example that comes to mind, that we acknowledged that that is at least something that would be an interesting thing to debate the merits of, but that we simply did not have time for. So there's stuff we never even got to, and then there's addressing the solicitors' responses to the stuff that the last committee did address. Let's start with that, though. I guess the question is, do we want to handle, it sounds like, Dan, what you're saying is that you think that we should handle that stuff in-house, either in rules or with some ad hoc committee, but that to not convene a new charter review committee to handle those, like to handle the solicitor feedback. Is that, am I hearing you correctly there?
Yes, you are. And I feel that if we're going to do something new, that's when we need the citizen input where they have a vote. And that would take on new language or new changes that we didn't already consider, like you said. I'm not ruling that out, but I'd like to finish this, get it to the, approved by the full council, approved by the mayor, and sent to the city solicitor. And then perhaps, if you want, start a new charter review. We have the document. And you are totally correct in that each one of the sections, the city solicitor may have made changes in language. He rewrote a whole section. I thought the intent was still there. There was one section where you'll see in whole green, and I think some of that was your actual thoughts that you had brought up, Tom, for, I forget, it was agendas or something. Anyway, if we don't like that language and we like the language we did before, okay, we have to debate that with the city attorney. Some of his suggestions were suggestions. Some of them were, you got to do it this way. So I put his suggestions in because that's what the mayor liked. That doesn't mean we don't have a voice in that. It just is what I did. And I think we have to go through article by article and decide where do we want to go from here. I think it is more efficient to do that. Decide if we really don't like the changes that the mayor and the city attorney are suggesting, and we just scrap it, and we move it to a new committee, or if we want to send it to the legislature. And I really feel that since you and I, with the addition of Omar, we're already on the committee and we're already in the rules committee, that's my suggestion, we keep it in the rules committee, because we can invite others. We have the president of the council who's just seeing the full thing now and is an outside interpreter for this, but other members like Sarah and Dave, and we can always invite them in to give us their perspective because they know what our intent was when we wrote it, when we made the changes. So I'm really feeling like we should proceed that way, and then hopefully we get it done, say by the fall, sometime in the fall. We might have to meet more often, but that way, once it's done, we can say, okay, do we want to do more new things? And one of the things I was going to bring up is anything like youth voting, we'd have to move on quickly. And we don't have to do a charter review committee that examines the whole charter. We've done charter changes in my history on the council, which were only for specific items. Like we could take that up, get it done, either in council or with another committee, and get that to the legislature, because that'll have to be a ballot question for 21. That's an example of what we could do. A couple of small things rather than do a full charter.
Peg, you had your hand up.
I clearly I've lost my mind. So I'm not entirely sure I'm following all of the potential permutations of this. So let me use my own words and you just tell me if I'm right. So we have a document that came out of the committee. We'll call it document A. That document was then reviewed by the attorney with changes, suggestions, alternatives. Call that document B. There is also a lot of stuff going on in everyone's heads that never got to be documented, that are things that may want to be addressed at some point. And so I think what we're trying to get at here is document A, we need to vote up or down as it existed coming out of the committee. Will we also be taking into consideration during that review in this committee, will we also be bringing in the ideas from the lawyer and either include them or exclude include them, and then ultimately vote that document up or down. And then lastly, all of these other things are a completely separate group, possibly a new group of people, possibly a new effort. All of these other things are completely tabled for another day, possibly later this year, whatever. But are we talking about, in the near term, reviewing document A with and or without the lawyer changes? Am I understanding that?
I would like to answer that we shouldn't do that because document B, the clean version, which includes the mayor, also includes the mayor's edits and the lawyer's edits. I believe that's what the mayor will approve. So we have to be careful because the mayor was at that meeting, and I'm glad she's here, because she's an equal player. If we just go with what we like for the recommendations from the committee, then there's a step in between there where the mayor will have to decide whether she wants to agree with the old committee language. So my feeling is it has to be document B that we look at.
Okay.
But we're looking at it at the same time as document A,
Yep.
which is the marked up version, and say, you know, I like the committee's language, and we could debate with the mayor at that time, why did we change this?
Right.
And then
Okay.
change.
And I will also say that the
change, just let me conclude by saying any significant change from what the city attorney and the mayor approved, in a sense, in the draft form, would require her approval. And then if it's language that is iffy, it has to go back to the city attorney.
Yeah, and I will, you know, after having read it, I don't think there's a whole lot that the lawyers came up with that were like, oh my God, that's life altering. They were pretty minor from what I read.
Let me just give you a sample change, Tom. We wanted 5 members on the Board of Public Works. The mayor at the time, when we met in May, said she was kind of in favor of that early on, but now she's decided that given it's hard to keep members on that we should keep it to 3. So all that language where we changed it to 5 members and had it, we went back to the staggered language, which was the original charter. That was the city attorney's recommendation and the mayor's recommendation. So that's the that was a significant change we had made that we no longer can make unless the mayor agrees to go back to 5. That's just an example. So,
right. And so just to like, in the ideal world, what would have happened is that language, like those recommendations would have gone back to the convened charter review committee and said, hey, I know this is what you were looking for. Here's what's allowable under Mass general law, and here's what we can actually do. So, and then we would have just been able to sort of figure that out. And maybe at some points we would have said, oh, well, are you sure is there any way we could do something kind of like this? Because we think it'd be really cool and whatever. But so now we've got all this feedback that the council needs to basically, you know, that needs to be basically incorporated so that we can get something for the council to sort of vote up or down as a legislative petition.
Yep.
And the question before us, one of the 2 questions before us is who handles those revisions and handles that document?
I think it's us, but that's just my opinion.
I do as well.
What do you think?
Also, Mayor, can you mute?
Oh, shoot.
That was
I'm
me. I put her. I'll mute her. Okay.
Okay, sorry.
So here's one. Oh, sorry, Dave, you had your hand up.
Just want to simply say, I whatever document A or B you go with, I like to see the Rules Committee hash it out. Just because I'm very pessimistic right now. I don't think we have the luxury of time. At some point in time, the city council is going to be knee deep in budget considerations and time considerations. So I'm not trying to be efficient, but I like the idea of youth voting, but I really think you should try to make hay with what we have. And I think that, and I trust the 3 of you, and I think that's how you should go.
Just to be clear, when I brought up youth voting, I felt that would be something for a future committee, and I would be in support of a future committee in the near future.
Right. And so here's one thing that I would say. I don't necessarily have a problem with the rules committee handling that feedback because, like you said, President Coniff, it's fairly most of it's fairly technical and not like, I mean, I think there are probably a few points where maybe there's some actual values judgments to be made, but I think a lot of it is not like that. So I don't necessarily have a problem with that. Here's where I run into a little bit of a just sticking point is if we wanted, if there was, let's just say that we want to leave open the possibility of any of the, let's just go with the youth voting example for now because it's one that we've already brought up, but there's a bunch of other things that we discussed at in some level. Let's say for a moment that we want to leave the possibility open of any of those changes making it onto the ballot in 2021, which I don't think needs to happen, but let's just say that we want to consider the possibility of that. If we are going to do that, then time becomes a factor.
Mm-hmm.
Because we really realistically need to get that theoretical committee, if they want to look at any of this stuff, they'd really have to have a final draft with all their research done and have it run by the solicitor and everything by the end of April.
April or August?
Oh, it has to be done by like June.
Oh.
Well, right. So they need to have it to the council in May so that it can get.
That's not going to happen.
I mean, it's we did it last time and we can.
It's April 28th.
No, I mean April of 2021.
Oh.
Because like it's going to take an entire summer for the state legislature to move it into multiple different committees and have their council, like their own legal, sit on it. And it just like last time it was a tough process for us to be making. I was making phone calls multiple times a week to the legislature, trying to get them to make sure that they see stuff and make sure that if they have questions, they're talking to one another. It's tricky. It's totally doable. We did it once before. We've done it more than once before, but like, it's totally doable, but it's tricky. So if we decided that we're not going to convene a charter review committee until such time as the review of the stuff that that we just got back from the solicitor is complete. And if that doesn't happen in a quick manner, we could be talking about a committee forming in like September, October, that then has a pretty narrow window to do anything they want to do. You had your hand up first, I think.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
Let me say this. The only thing that delays, that makes that urgent is because it's a voting issue. If like you and Sarah got together and say, let's do some research and just do this issue, the council doesn't need a charter review committee to put forward at any time a single element of a charter change. We've done it. So let's just say you wanted to add that to Article 7, youth voting, and you wanted to do some research, find out if it's even legal in the whole state. That can happen concurrent with this or right after this is done. And it can get to the legislature a lot sooner because we're not looking at a lot of other parts of the document. Other parts of the document, like, would probably be legislative action. And that doesn't require a vote by the citizens, so therefore that has more time. And just to be practical, this legislature is not going to touch this until maybe this current one we've got. If we send it to them, let's say we send it to them in October, they're not going to get it. They're not going to touch it until May. They've got so much. They have a budget that's behind. And I think we've done so much work on it. Once we send it to the legislature or to the city attorney and to the legislature, then we move on to things, oh, we forgot to do that. Now, there may be some things we could do right now. For instance, the city attorney brought up the idea of fixing the appointment language in that article because of the recent kerflooey about can the mayor do an appointment to the Board of Public Works and stuff like that. And he said, maybe you guys should look at this language. I saw that in one of his markup things. If the mayor's in favor, we could do that right now and send it in with this document. But that's the kind of amendment that we'd have to get the mayor on board with so that we can do it. It's new. It's not like
Right.
things like that. We could still approach if you're really desperate to try them. I would be willing to look at appointments, for instance. That these things raise their ugly head when we start over time, and God, we need a charter change to clean that up. So anyway, I feel that we should hold off on, we should not put aside major changes like youth voting, but we might be able to get it done if we do them in a smaller way, like just that. Have a ad hoc committee to just look at that. If you do that, it's a lot faster.
Well, it's true. I mean, it's true that any particular charter change, the council has the authority to do a legislative petition at any time. We don't require a charter review process to do that. I did think that the charter review process, and in particular, the citizen involvement in it, made for maybe I think that was a positive thing.
Oh, I agree.
I enjoyed having that, given that how the charter is such a, like, it's such an important document. I like the idea of a charter review committee handling those sorts of things so that we get some outsider perspective, but you're absolutely right that it's not required.
And we could still do that charter review committee if you want to do it like January. We could start a new committee.
But if it comes in January, they have until April to get anything done.
Only for voting ideas.
Right. Well, only for, it's not just voting ideas. It's anything that the legislature determines, like, substantially affects the relationship between people and the government.
I don't know what you're thinking, but okay, I agree with you. But
I mean, I just, as an example, like the stuff that we were talking about with the term Director of Public Works, my understanding is that Mark Tanner said that would require a vote, like a public vote.
I have not heard that at all. This is the first time hearing that. He did not indicate that to me. Where did you hear that, Tom?
I heard that in a discussion with the mayor, but perhaps I misheard.
I don't think that's the case. Changing it to a 3-year term equals what all the other department heads have. They all have 3-year terms. I don't see that as a significant, well, it's not our call. It's a legislature. They may decide there's so many changes, they may have to take this one, which is why we need to get it to them, so that if we have to put this one on the ballot, they have time to do it. Anyway, Peg wanted to say things and we've been talking around her.
Not sure I even remember, but the point I think that I want to make is that if we do a committee, a separate committee, which I have no problem with, we need to be very clear about what I don't want to see happen is anything in the current document be delayed in any way because we are starting up a second committee. They need to be separate entities and they need to go on their own timeline. And I want to see what the work that they did last year, make it to home base. And if concurrent to that, we set up a separate committee that looks at a whole slew of other things, they're going to need a codified document to work from. And so we kind of have to, I mean, we have to have a certain level of approval. They can start discussing ideas like youth voting, but in terms of making concrete changes to a document that isn't approved yet, we wouldn't be able to do that. But I really, my focus is I want to get that other one put to bed and get it kind of done. And if that takes up all of our energy right now, then that's what we're going to have to do, because tying them together in any way, I would not be a fan of. And I don't know that you were even suggesting that, Tom, but that was my thought.
I think we put this to bed. I agree. And I also want to say that having read it over a couple of times and doing that clean version, there's only a few significant changes, like how we want to do charter review committees in the future. The Board of Public Works, I'm sorry, the Department of Public Works head being a 3-year term. They're not that big, but putting them under personnel policies and things like that, they're not that big a deal. There's not a lot of changes that are massive. So I think this can go pretty quickly through our own council review and then to the legislature. Once our finished document goes to the legislature or goes to the city attorney to be made into a legislator, that's a document that we could look at. We could debate whether we should move on to a new committee or not, because we don't know what the legislature is going to do with what we're sending them. They may say, wait a minute, we don't like that. We're not going to approve it, or, you know. Do we want to wait until we get that back as, okay, we approve all of this, it's yours, they vote on it, and we get it back? I could go either way, but finish this document first, get it to the legislature through the city attorney. Once it's done, then we move on to anything new. That's where I am with this. I agree with Peg. Omar, do you have any opinion? I haven't heard from you at all.
You're muted.
I did not. I just listening between all you three counselors, and I can agree that you should send it to the rules and invite us and invite all the other members of the committee if any of you have any questions or something like that, and review it there. And then if in the future they want to add new stuff, create another committee. But I think we should work with the version that we came out and with the version that the attorney came out, and work with that, because at the end that's what the committee suggests at the end of the old meetings that we have. I think we should start with that, and if anyone else in the future want to add something, you know, the president of the council can appoint another committee and start working with another charter review.
Are we ready for a motion, or do you want to keep discussing this time?
I mean, it seems pretty clear where you guys are. There's a part of me that kind of thinks I would rather, like, when it comes to how we handle the revisions to that document, like prior to us sending it out, there's a part of me that kind of thinks that it would be a good idea to convene a new committee. Like, I just think that, you know, that it's like, ideally we'd have the old committee to handle it, but without, I mean, I don't necessarily object to it going to rules, but there's part of me that kind of likes the idea of that we should get that rolling. I mean, if that ends up being the one task of that committee, then fine. If they want to do some other stuff after that, then.
I can only say that, Tom, I want citizen involvement, and I'm impressed that Sarah and Dave came to this meeting, and I think we can get others to give us their input as we look at it. But a whole new committee is cumbersome. That takes time to get people who want to be on it. Then you formulate it. I just think we need to get this document done, and the Rules Committee is the place to do it, especially since you and I were on the committee and we know a lot about why we made the changes we made. Omar invited in, even get Joe McCoy to come in and give us his input as we go along. But I really feel like we should just keep it in committee. That's where I'm going to be with this in our committee.
Okay, so let me just ask you, just refresh me on this, because I wasn't invited to that January meeting and don't really know this process as well. Is it ready to go? Like, could I introduce it to rules at the next council meeting, or are we still waiting?
Yeah, the 2 documents I sent to you, I'm going to ask that they be put in the package, and that under new business, they be sent to, so that you could send them. Those 2 documents, a clean version of the marked up version, both of those sent to Rules Committee for review. And since I went through it, I could answer any counselor's questions. What does this mean? Like Peg is confused about. some section of it, that's easy to do. It'd be hard for me to do that with Peg, actually, because it's a rules, we are on the committee. But I think, yes, that's what I would do. Two things. I would make a motion to recommend that we use this charter review documents that were presented by the 2018-19 document as complying with the charter's 2020 requirement for review. And two, send these documents to the Rules Committee for review. So those two motions I would like us to do. That's my opinion.
All right. I guess my one thing is I have some concerns. I have a feeling I'll get outvoted on this, but I have some concerns about that if we're not careful about how we do this process, we'll find ourselves in a position where we don't convene a committee until it's like for 2020. Or until it's too late for them to actually do anything.
Are you talking about a new committee?
Yes.
I don't see the need for a new committee right now. That's my opinion. We got to get this one done. If you're really worried about getting other things done in the charter, let me just say over time, this particular charter review did major changes. Last time we did in 2010, we did very few changes. I am very happy with the kind of work we did because there was a lot of interesting changes, primarily because the mayor said, do whatever you think we need, whereas former Mayor Tosnick wouldn't let us. So I'm really excited about the fact that we've done quite a bit. Yes, there's more that can be done, but I just think we need to be patient. Get this one out of the way, get it back in the legislature, and do another review. Youth voting is important. We could do that as one issue. If that's so, it's not on my radar. It's the first time I'm hearing it, but it's a neat idea. So we could look at that. We don't have to have a committee, or we could have a charter review committee, but their task is only to look at that object, maybe some other things that you're interested in them looking at, not the entire charter. You know what I'm saying? That would be more efficient. That can convene as soon as this work is done. So I'm not saying you can't get it done. I know you're worried about timing, but we've got to get this one done. I just feel like we have to get this one done. That's where I'm at. So can I make a motion?
Sure.
I move that we recommend to the city council that the review committee's work as edited by the city attorney from 2018-19 charter review be used to comply with the 2020 requirement of the charter for review.
Hang on. I have a question on that motion. It was multi-layered. So I don't want to second it yet without asking questions. And the questions are, one is to move the document and potential changes by the lawyer to city council to be moved to the rules committee and reviewed. The second thing you said.
I haven't made that. My first motion was simply to accept that document as complying. We're supposed to vote on whether or not we are complying with the 2020 charter review requirement and that this document will be acceptable to the full council as that. We have to do that. We have to decide if that's sufficient.
Why can't we decide that we do or do not need to convene a committee irrespective of the fact that we have a document that we're going to review? Why can't the convening of a committee for 2020 be a standalone motion? We're either going to do it or we're not. And
well, then it's implied that we don't need to convene a committee because we have this document to review. Either way, I think it solves the problem.
I don't think that's why we wouldn't be convening a committee. I think we would or would not convene a committee independent. There may be other city councilors who, like Tom, would like to see an additional committee be formed independent of this document. And I feel like they're separate. There's this document and then there's, do we convene a committee? And then I don't want us to conflate the two and say, because we have a document, therefore we're not going to have a committee.
My motion only suggests that we have to decide to comply with the charter, whether this document complies with the charter review. We say yes to that. It doesn't negate the possibility of another committee being formed. If that committee isn't formed, we still have to decide if this will comply with the charter requirement, and I believe it does, if the council says it does. Then we could move to have another committee now or in the future. But my point is only that we have to have the full council decide if this document will suffice for complying with the charter, which I believe it does. And secondly, then a second motion would be to move the document to the Rules Committee for review. So those are two motions. The third thing is to set up a new committee, which we can debate and decide now or at another time. But if that is not agreed to by the full council, the committee, a new committee, we still have to comply with the charter. So by doing the first one, it doesn't negate having a new committee, in my opinion. Does that help, Peg?
Yeah, is there no other way for us to say that that we do or do not want to do a 2020 city charter review? Does that need to be tied to a reason? Does it need to be tied to a reason? Can't we just say that because not anything that the 2019 document satisfies 2020, can we just say that the city council does not recommend or does recommend a city charter review be formed in 2020? Does it have to be tied to this other document as the reason or not, or that we are?
I think you're right. We don't have to tie it to that. If we decide we don't need a 2020 review, let's say that's the motion on the floor, then we are implied saying this will suffice. In year 2000, the full council voted not to do a review because we just had the charter passed in 1996, so we didn't do it. So they just voted not to do a review. So we're doing the same thing. So you're right, we could do that. And then move the current charter review documents to the Rules Committee. So if that's the motion you want, I'm happy to do that too.
So just before we make any motions, like, I just want to say, I understand that there are people who are probably smarter and better at law than me that see this differently from me. But when I read the language, I'll share it. When I read the language of our charter when it comes to charter review, can you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it seems to me that I don't see, it says at least once every 10 years and every year ending in 0. The council shall provide for a review of the charter by, this is the part that's important, by a special standing committee of the city council and 4 additional persons to be appointed by the council president.
By a special or standing committee, please.
Yes.
Standing committee being the Rules Committee.
So there's some frustrating grammar here that makes this a little bit hard to interpret, but the way that I don't see how you can interpret this in a way that doesn't include those 4 additional persons to be appointed by the council president.
I do. It says a standing committee. It says it right there. It says a charter, special, or standing committee. We've had charter changes.
Right. If it said by a standing committee or a special committee of the city council and 4 additional persons, that'd be one thing. But when it says a special or standing committee of the city council and 4 additional persons, I don't see how you don't have the public involvement in that. That's.
Well, okay, I will grant you that. But the city attorney said the council could still vote not to do it. And by doing that, that's all they have to do. It's the council's decision whether to have a charter review committee. I don't have that in front of me, but I sent you that opinion.
I saw that opinion as well. I don't see how you get there. I mean,
well, you'll have to debate that with the city attorney, Tom. I just don't see us. I will not support a new committee. I want to finish this document. I don't see the reason we need to, and the city attorney, who's been very good, has said we don't have to. We can simply vote not to. And I have to go with-
Dave and Peg, you had your hands up.
Oh, Dave, you can go.
I just simply think that's a debate for the full council. I think you have three things going on. One, in reverse order, one is, number three is the, a 2020 standalone charter review committee. And then you have the two documents. I think that you can go round and round, but I think at city council, they're going to decide whether or not they want to have that committee with your influence. But I don't think that's the talk for tonight.
Well, go ahead, Peg.
I'm not a lawyer, but I'm related to about 12 of them. The way I read it is that you have to convene once every 10 years between the zeros. So if 10 years is defined as 2010 to 2020, you have to convene once, not also in the years that start with zero. I'm reading it that in 10 years, and they're defining 10 years as being a finite interval of zeros, years that end in zeros. That's the interval that you got to at least meet once. I didn't read it that you meet once and then also in the years that equal zero. That's where I'm getting confused. I don't see an and there.
I see that interpretation, and I thought that's where we were when we convened the 2018-19 one. I thought, oh yeah, it's a full committee. It's a full committee of the ad hoc committee. I tend to agree with Tom now that if we are going to do it, we have to add 4 members of the citizens to a standing committee or a separate committee. But I agree with Peg.
He agrees with everyone.
This
I agree.
language has tripped us up a bunch of times before because it's a long runoff sentence with a lot of just with a lot of qualifiers in it, and it's whatever. I'm not expecting that we're going to get there tonight. I guess where I am is if we want to handle the feedback from the last charter review committee in rules, and if we want to prioritize that, I don't have an issue with that. Where I am not quite ready to do anything yet, just to let you know where I am, is anything where we take a vote saying that handling that satisfies our obligation under the current charter. You might be right and I might be wrong, but that's not how I'm interpreting that. And we had thorough discussions about this last time. Now, if we convened a charter review committee that looked at the charter and said, yep, it's good, I don't really want to do anything else, what they did last time is totally sufficient, and then dissolved, that's 100% fine. But the way that I'm reading this, there's an importance of the addition of those members of the public, that there's an opportunity when this comes up for them to talk.
You're just going against the advice of the city attorney, so
I appreciate that, but I'm, Peg.
Yeah, so I agree. If we had a committee, we absolutely need to bring in additional people. I'm questioning what the intent of the charter would have been when the original framers of our Constitution got together. Why would they think that we need to do it once every 10 years and then also in the years that end in zero? What would be that point?
The way that I remember it from the last time we discussed this, because it came up, there were some people that thought that we could only meet in the years ending in zeros. What I thought it was is saying, at minimum, on the years ending with zeros, you have to do this. If you want to do it at any other time, you are also free to do that. That's what my understanding of it.
Okay.
What Peg is saying, though, is that the 2018-19 charter review, by doing that, we have complied with the charter because we're supposed to do it within those 10 years. And I think that's where the attorney is. But we can debate this all night. I'm willing to do whatever you want to do now. I'd like to get this document done and send it to rules and get it done. So where do you want to go now, Tom? What motion would you accept?
Well, look, you can make whatever motion. I don't have to but I would just I would be perfectly happy personally with us saying that let's send this, like, let's send the document that Mark Tanner provided feedback on from the last charter review committee to rules, get to work on that, and we'll figure out the rest of this as we go.
Okay,
I
I'll
would
move
agree.
that we send the documents from the Charter Review Committee and Mark Tanner to the Rules Committee for review at the next council meeting.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, great.
So just to clarify, are we going to bring up a debate at the next meeting on May 6th, whether to convene a 2020 Charter Review Committee at the full council level? Is that where we're at?
I don't know if it's necessary to do that quite yet.
Okay.
I think it's a conversation we're going to have over time.
Mhm.
And I think that some of the aspects of that conversation might change depending on how quickly we get through the document from last year. If we sit down at one super productive meeting and get it done and out to the legislature, then maybe that changes what we would actually be looking at. I think that there's some conversations we need to just have about some things, but I think that it's an ongoing discussion. I don't think it needs to happen on next Wednesday.
Okay. So whether or not we interpret this in Peg's way, which is that we've done a charter review within the 10 years or not, unless someone challenges that, if you want to challenge that, Tom, okay, I don't think we'll have a problem if we move forward and we don't set up a new committee in 2020. I think we're okay. So I agree with you. We don't have to rush into it. We may set up another committee, but I have to go with the city attorney's opinion, and I think we're okay. So, all right, that's done. I will make sure that the two documents get to Barbara for inclusion in the packet so that all the counselors get them, and then we'll move them to rules. I'll ask her to put it under new business so we can move them to rules.
And Daniel, send them, like, I know you said
As
that
PDF.
had I gone into my software and removed edits and all, can you make it so that people don't have to do all that, that what you get and what you're reading and what you print is what came out of the committee from 2019, and then the other one that you print is the one that has all the edits in it, that the lawyer.
Well, the one I was going to print is the clean version, which has the edits from the city attorney.
Okay.
Now,
Why do you call that the clean version, Dan?
Because when you
That's the
do all the
confusion for me.
markups, it's very confusing. The markups, reading all his comments and everything, okay, I could send that one, but I don't know how a PDF will interpret it. Will that PDF just copy it with the markups?
I don't know.
I'm sure Barb can handle.
I just want to, right now, as I look at the two documents, Dan, and if someone asks me my opinion on either one and or to vote on either one, they look identical. I printed them. The words are the same. There's different edits, and by that I mean things are color coded differently in the one that you're calling clean versus the one that the lawyer has. Like the one in yours has the lawyer verbiage, but it's not highlighted in green. The one from the lawyer has the same verbiage, but it's highlighted in green because that's the lawyer's edit. So
that's my interpretation. All I'm saying is I believe the full council should be able to look at what the city attorney, his opinions. That's what the markup version would be. So I think I'll send that as a PDF so he can read it. Everybody can read all the opinions. The other version is comparing the two. First of all, did I make a mistake in going from one markup to what I consider a version that we should vote on? So,
I mean, don't we have the document? Don't we have an unedited, unlawyer touched document that came out of the committee last year that the lawyer never got? That we
well, yes. Number one, yes. If you click on the tracking bar and click original, you'll see the document that came from the committee.
Okay.
I can give you 3 documents. I just think the opinions of the city attorney ought to be available to the full council. so that they can interpret them and see what ended up in the final version that I put forward. But that's fine.
Yeah, I want to make sure that whatever final version you put forward.
I'll send the original from the Charter Review Committee that was out in September.
Yep.
I will send the marked up version as a PDF with his comments, and then the final version, which is the one that I hope we vote on eventually.
Yeah, and I think it's important, Dan, that if a document is coming to the city council that came out of a committee, that committee blesses the fact that that's what they agreed on. Because you just said something about things that you made changes to after the committee was over. That didn't happen.
I only tried to put into what I call a clean document without comments what the lawyer said we should do.
Okay.
I didn't make any unilateral decisions.
Okay.
Which is why I want the marked up version to be available to the counselors, because you guys may not want to do what he suggested being done.
Agreed.
I put it in there because that's what the city attorney and the mayor agreed to. So we can decide not to agree with those changes, and then they don't get changed.
Right.
We
Okay.
could attempt to get those that the committee recommended, the original document, past the city attorney and the mayor, but that's another question. So
Okay.
it is confusing, I apologize, but Mark, is very thorough, and he has a ton of comments on all of the stuff he's done for us, ordinances, you know.
Yeah, and I agree, but I also don't agree with some of his changes. And what I'm suggesting is I want your committee, the 3, 4, 5 of you, pretty much I'm the only one who wasn't on the committee, those of you that you can look at the document and agree, yes, this is what we agreed to, city council. We want you to vote on it. And oh, by the way, there's another document where the lawyer weighed in. Consider those, and that's it. Like, it's really busy right now, and I'm really confused about what came out of this body, not the rules committee, but the committee, the charter committee, and what morphed into what the mayor and the lawyer wanted. That's great that they want that stuff, but we need to have the work product from the committee.
Absolutely.
Untainted.
It's there. Yeah, okay. I'm not going to debate it. It's absolutely there.
Okay.
The thing that has to be understood is if the mayor didn't agree with stuff that came out of the committee, and it's in the final document I did, that's unfortunately where we're at, because she's an equal partner. So I just wanted you to
We
know.
can have further discussions. We can,
Yeah, we could debate it with her, sure. I would hope she could come into these meetings. She decided not to stay on this one, so. Okay. Good.
All right. So yeah, this sounds like progress, and we'll. Do you think it'd be wise to actually reach out and invite Attorney Tanner to one of our meetings, or is that just too expensive at this point?
I don't think the mayor will agree with it, because we just approved a $15,000 increase in legal fees for this fiscal year, so we're on the edge. I think if we get to July 1 and we may need to ask him why, that's not that far away, we can do that. But I don't think she'll approve any city attorney appearance.
I'm sure that the mayor, if she can attend, can, she was in.
Well, I think it's important, like,
Represent
let's say we go through it all and we say, we don't agree with that, and I tell you, well, that's what the mayor wanted, then we get her to the next meeting to debate it. Maybe we can convince her otherwise. That's the kind of thing. But
Okay. All right. Well, that all sounds good, and let's just keep talking. I guess we'll get ready to start working on this when we have our next meeting. I never do this, but does it make sense to schedule our next meeting now?
Yeah.
That's something.
yeah, I just wanted to say the pilot program stuff, just from my opinion, we ought to put that on hold, because all these nonprofits, churches, they don't have any money coming in. We might want to wait on that for a while before we debate it. That's just me. I'm not in favor of doing anything with that until this pandemic is out of the way, and these Williston and the churches. I mean, it's
And
hard.
I also,
I just
agree.
feel like we don't have to rush that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when we do discuss that, I've already heard from the chief operating officer, whatever his name is, over at Williston, he wants to be invited to this meeting. So we need to kind of give us enough runway to get that. And I think Bill obviously needs to be here.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
when I spoke to Bill about this, the sense that I got is that right now managing the
Yeah.
and budget departments at like 100 different grocery stores, he is really, really tapped out. He doesn't mind the idea of this getting pushed back until sort of the coast clears on some of this pandemic stuff, so that we can actually like sit down at a table and discuss it. But also, I think he's putting in a lot of overtime and
Yeah, I agree. I totally
just
agree.
working hard to meet his current obligations. And I don't think he's really rushing to have a big high profile thing like dropped on his lap
Right.
till some of this clears up. So I don't think anyone's really rushing to have that happen.
Agreed.
It needs to.
It gives us more time to deal with the charter, and I don't know what's happening with the volunteer work-off program. Have you heard from Counselor Krasinski on that, Tom?
Yeah, so actually I did want to talk to you guys about that, because I thought that we had sort of resolved that, but
Take care.
oh,
Hi,
Hi,
Dave.
Dave.
thanks, Dave.
I thought he still had to give us more information.
Was that where we are on that?
I was pretty sure that's where we were.
Okay.
I thought there was some financial information, comparative analysis that he was going to provide us. I also, and unfortunately, whatever meeting was our last meeting, wait, now I'm getting confused. Maybe that was the finance meeting where we had a different thing going on.
We had the CPA thing in finance.
Right. Yeah, that was a different thing. Never
But
mind.
I thought we were going to invite Brendan from the senior center over here and to talk about it. He had somebody else involved, council on aging person who were involved.
Bye, Sarah.
I think we need them here to talk about that. So Tom, if you want to get that done on the agenda, we need to get.
I will also,
JP and those
was it,
people here.
was it, because I've lost my mind. Was it this issue that I was forming the committee?
You may have been, because you were going to,
Because-
you were looking into
Because,
it. Yes.
yeah, because I still need one more person, and I'm pretty sure that committee should not convene right now.
Okay, but this is what I thought. Maybe I'm going completely nuts because I've
I'm
been
sure we all are.
in the house for a month and a half. And so I apologize if that's the case. But I thought that in terms of actually convening the committee, which was the thing that was going to rules, I thought we already voted on that. Didn't we?
No, I'm giving, what do you mean voted on?
I thought that we, in the council, we met with Brendan and we discussed the composition, that it would include some people from the council,
Yes.
someone from the finance.
And I
committee.
put out the word. I publicized it.
Right. So we already voted to establish that committee, right?
Correct. And that was it, wasn't it?
Then what else is required of this committee on that? Because it's still on our agenda, and I thought that we voted to establish the committee. Is there
It's not-
required of the rules committee?
No, you're correct. You are correct, Dan. Tom.
Dan, you
I
had
think,
your hand
I
up.
think we still need it in committee because we have to wait for that subcommittee to come back to us with their recommendations. And then we present it to the full council.
Correct.
I mean, I think we have to present it to the full council because we get the full council has to vote whether we want to do this. And Peg's subcommittee, shall we say,
Yep.
get a report back to us. So remembering all of this, I still think
So-
Tom has to be there pending Peg's report.
So my report to this committee then is that I have put out the word for people to join the committee, and I have all the members, except I need one more from the public. I have not gone back and continued to mine for additional people because I don't see that group meeting right now.
So just from a process standpoint, should I just be indefinitely extending this agenda item until such time as this committee is to convene and report back to us.
Yeah.
Okay.
It stays on there until it's
I
not.
just,
So Peg, are you chairing that subcommittee, so to speak?
No, they'll pick their own chair once they convene. I will chair the first meeting and then they will pick a
Oh,
chair.
I remember. That's what you said. Okay.
okay.
All right.
I just wasn't clear if there was something in the immediate term that was required of us. So thank you for clarifying that.
I think the goal would be to get this for the 2022 fiscal year. I mean, a senior work-off program, I guess it could affect this,
Oh, yeah.
fiscal year, but we
Yeah,
don't
we're not gonna-
necessarily have to rush it.
So,
Yeah, and also, and you know, in full candor,
Mhm.
it could get, I mean, we have no idea what this pandemic is doing to the financial condition of this city. And to add, like 6 months ago, I would have been like, oh, let's put the hammer to the nail because we're going to go full steam ahead on this. Now, I think we need to get a better reading on what the city's going to look like financially, so that we can evaluate anything that comes out of the committee
right.
as viable or not. So,
Yeah, that's a good,
I
I mean,
agree.
it changes a lot of things.
Totally agree.
Okay, I just looked at the I just looked at the agenda or the schedule, and it looks like Thursday, May 7th, there's no city council meetings.
Okay.
Let me get to my calendar, okay, guys?
Is that I mean, it's just, it's a week from now, but is that just a week and two, but it's we would have it submitted and
And do we have to do it so soon?
we don't have to. It was just the closest day after the city council meeting that there wasn't another city council meeting that we'd be competing for Zoom space with.
Well, you're right. I have a bunch of other meetings.
I mean, like the
like
next
with the
week.
budget. So if you wanted to start on the 7th,
look like Tom.
I'm okay with it.
The next week it's
Also-
Finance Monday, Ordinance Tuesday. I guess we could do Wednesday the 13th if you'd prefer that.
I have a finance meeting, or do I?
No, it looks like you have a finance meeting on Monday the 11th.
Yeah, we changed that. So we have the 11th and the 13th, 14th, right? Those are budget meetings.
14th is, yeah, there's a budget meeting.
So 13th we could do. I'd like that. That'd be better.
You'd prefer the 13th?
If that's okay with everybody.
That's fine with me.
Nothing going on.
Yeah. Does 5:30, that's,
Yeah.
you like that time?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, I will put that,
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
of course.
About the Rule 11L? I thought we finished that, and I don't see why we can't bring that forward. I liked it.
If you
So,
want to,
so
yeah.
in the minutes that we haven't approved yet is my version of what we talked about in the meeting on March 12th, which was the final wording with Barb in attendance. The problem is that we don't have a recording of that meeting. And so I interpreted what I could remember and the copious notes I took, but until you guys approve those minutes and agree that that language is what we need, let's not move it right yet.
And why don't you just send it as a small, as a rule, like we did with the other one? Just send
Well, I
it.
will once you guys approve the minutes, and if the minutes work for you, then I will create a document that can go to the city council.
Okay, then I'll look at those minutes, and if we look at it and we both approve them before tomorrow, would we send it to the packet, or do you want to wait for another meeting? There's no rush, I guess.
No.
Okay, cool.
All right, well, that all works for me. So I just put a note to schedule a meeting for the 13th. So I'll do that as soon as I get off this call. And yeah, I guess I'll talk to you guys next week.
Do you want a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Dan?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, see you later, guys.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night, Omar.